Welcome everyone to this webinar created by the Cannabis Means Business Conference. I am your host, Jillian Reddish, and today we are talking about equity and entrepreneurship, where we're going to focus on business tools for cannabis entrepreneurs to really help level the playing field. So it's going to be a really juicy conversation today. I have some amazing guests with me who I will be introducing in just a second. And just a brief background on myself. I am the co-founder of the Global Cannabis Network Collective, and I attend a ton of trade shows all over the world. And with that kind of experience, I've been working with the Cannabis Means Business Conference as part of their commitment to the evolving needs of the cannabis industry to continue to deliver meaningful and actionable business opportunities and connections. And so that's what we're very excited to deliver here today. So it's my pleasure to welcome our guests today. I'm going to start with Mike Lomuto with the Minority Cannabis Business Association. Hi, Mike. Please say hello.
Hey, Jillian. Hey, everybody. Good to be here. Thank you so much for having us. Good to see Ramon.
Yeah, and that brings me to our next guest, Ramon Garcia of the Equity Trade Network. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate the welcome and thank you guys for having us. I'm definitely happy to be amongst this community and family, see all the good faces.
Let's get into this conversation today. Equity and entrepreneurship is always a huge focus for cannabis, and of course, for the Cannabis Means Business Conference, too. We've got some great programming happening there. And so there's always so much to talk about. We couldn't fit everything we wanted to into the programming, so we wanted to shine the spotlight today with a webinar and bring in some special guests to help highlight all of the amazing activities that they have going on. So first, I'm going to go ahead and ask Mike to start. Mike, will you give us a little bit of background on who you are and MCBA, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the amazing and actionable programs that you all have.
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you for getting to talk about this. MCBA, Minority Cannabis Business Association. We represent minority businesses and leaders in the industry across the country. We technically are a trade association that is tasked with doing that work at the federal level. But the reality is also, as everybody in cannabis knows, a lot of this is happening at the state and the local level. And so we have a lot of different initiatives that are designed to be very grassroots oriented and really from a grassroots up type of movement. That includes one of our flagships, the Equity Workshop Tour. So that this year we have I want to say we have about 30 dates on the calendar across the country. And we've been building this for a few years now. And the real goal with the Equity Workshop Tour is exactly what you just said about bringing resources to folks and connecting folks. I think that the biggest resource that we have when it comes down to it is each other and the communities that we all tap into and really just, our own ingenuities that when we put them together, the synergies, I think, is what really is going to take us to where we're all trying to get to, which is a place where we have an equitable industry that's accessible to everybody, that everybody has a chance to succeed in, right? We understand that it's like not everybody is going to succeed, but as a lot of people in this industry can probably attest to, things have been pretty stacked, pretty for a little while, and it would be great to see a much more, as I mentioned, equitable and accessible industry. And so the Equity Workshop Tour really is about bringing folks together. It's different in every city. The program, we have a pretty malleable and customizable type of a program where it's pretty standardized, but we do make sure that we work with local teams everywhere we go. So we tap in and say, okay, what are the topics that need to be covered here? What's the format that's really going to work here? Because again, the number one thing for us is just getting the right folks in the room. I feel like when you get good people in the room together, good things happen. I've been in a lot of rooms with Ramon. Those conversations and the actions that come out of those conversations have always been really inspiring and catalyzing. So that's what the Equity Workshop Tour is for. I'm sure I can get into other stuff, but I mean that's the crux of what I want to make sure I mentioned here today. And we're launching the tour in DC on April 27th, so just a couple weeks from now, and then we'll be going across the country from there. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect timing. So let's dive in a little bit more on some of those. I'd love to hear about kind of the topics and what are maybe some of the differences that maybe different regions have. What are some of those things that you're kind of tailoring for different communities?
Yeah, so there's two main categories that we have at the tour. And this year we're mostly going to follow a format where the first half of the day will be more regulatory policy advocacy focused, and then the second half of the day will be more business centered, business support, things of that nature, right? Whether it's technical assistance, technically, right? I mean, that's a term that I think we use very broadly, but really the main thing again is sitting down with folks that have been in the space for a little while and having facilitated conversations about whether it's advocacy and policy, regulatory work, or whether it's about business centered support. To dial in further, I would say so. In California, for example, we're mapping out the Los Angeles workshop right now. That's pretty close to being finalized as far as the program goes. The first part of the day, we're definitely going to jump into some of what's going on with social consumption, right? It's one of the things that is top of mind and also probably needs a lot of work right now in order to get to where it needs to get to. I think that there's definitely been some runway provided, but we do need a lot of work to make sure that this is an equitable opportunity. And so we'll be having conversations with some regulators in the room and some local advocacy leaders, and really just dive in and see what we can come up with. The second half of the day,
I'll just chime in there
sorry,
real quick,
yeah.
Mike, that the consumption lounge issue is super interesting. I myself am based in Denver, Colorado. We're just starting to see more of that, and I know it's also an opportunity in New York, and that's a panel that will be happening at the Cannabis Means Business Conference too, because there's lots to talk about there. So I love hearing about that kind of a regional difference. And I'm also just curious, while we're still kind of talking about the policy aspect of the workshops, is that kind of a mix of, like your local policies, getting your local regulators in the room and also looking at national, or like what kind of focus, what could people expect to hear from that?
Yeah, usually local and or state officials. So, not too many federal officials at this point in time, but
Yeah.
a lot of local and state. So, we've had, I mean, last year we did about 23 events last year, and almost every single event there was either a state regulator and or a local municipality regulator. And what I got to say is that what I've really been encouraged by is a lot of the willingness of these folks to participate in these conversations, these dialogues, take the feedback. We know it's a slow process. We know that they have a lot of waters to navigate with the work that they do, but we also know that if we can come together and organize and have really clear messaging and talk and have great conversation, that it gives them that much more, ammunition, so to speak, to go back into their offices with and say, okay, hey, here's what I'm hearing from the community. Here's what we're coming up with. This is where the pressure is, right? This is what people are struggling with, and these are some of the solutions that people are presenting. So I'd say that, I've been encouraged by the way that the regulators across the country have been receiving the tour so far.
For us in California, it's been a 10-year thing, but why it's important for others, states or counties and cities to be involved in programs like this and be involved in conversations with their local legislators and regulators is because they need to hear your voice. They are learning this from a lot of us that have been doing this for a long time. Like California has been, medically legal since 1996. And even before that, we pushed culture across the nation for over 80 years. And so, there was a lot of hesitancy by legacy operators, by people to participate in these type of roundtables, but they need to hear your voice. They need to understand what your challenges are. Otherwise, they're going to put in place regulations or rules that make it hard for you to participate. And it is harder to fix those things afterwards as opposed to hearing your voice, getting your input, learning from you now so they can put in place equitable regulations that actually give people an opportunity to participate.
And what I'm hearing, Mike, is that this is actually providing an opportunity for business owners to have that direct access to their policymakers and regulators. So that's even more bang for their buck. I love that. So what else do people what's the kind of second half, the business tools aspect of these workshops?
Yeah, so the second half of the day when we get into the business related stuff. So um going back to LA again because it's top of mind because we just had a planning call for that. The second half of the day we are actually going to have a deeper dive of a roundtable conversation about social consumption lounges. But that's going to be more so a facilitated conversation amongst business leaders, without the regulators in that conversation, more about the brass tacks of what is the sustainable model gonna look like? What kind of tools do we need to make sure this stands up? What kind of tools exist within our networks that we can refer people to, and so on and so forth. Another roundtable conversation that seems like it's emerging in a lot of places is financial survival and what kind of mechanisms you need in place in order to make sure that you're able to make the right financial decisions when you're in survival mode. Unfortunately, a lot of people in this industry are in survival mode. And so we need to make sure that folks we're not putting our heads in the sands on it. We're saying, okay, let's take it head on and figure out amongst all the people that are at this table right now, what are we all doing? What are we all trying? And what's working, what isn't? And that way we can accelerate our progress, because I think that a lot of times what happens as business owners is we end up in a silo, and we're talking with our business partners. That's an echo chamber. We're all trying the same exact thing over and again. And it turns out that, Ramon over here already tried like A, B, C, and D. And here's like what went right and what went wrong. And boom, I just saved myself 6 months and I don't know how much money, and maybe can keep my business alive as a result from learning from each other. So Ramon, I
Mhm.
mean, I know that you guys do a lot of collaborative stuff within the network. I hear so many great stories about folks that are in the equity trade network. And I'm not trying to steal your thunder here and talk about the ETN here, but I just want to throw a shout out to you, because I know that we don't get to see each other all that much, but I get to hear a lot about the different things that you all are working on. And I think the number one thing that I hear that's really heartening there is the kind of collaboration and the way each other is learning from each other, just from the kinds of groups that you organize. So the equity workshop tour is kind of like a snapshot of that, so to speak. But not everywhere has those established networks where people are already like regular meeting like that and learning from each other. So anyway, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's brilliant, and thank you for teeing up the perfect segue, Mike. Let's kick it over to Ramon. Tell us about the work that you do with the Equity Trade Network and the certification that you all have.
Just for a little background, I helped create language for the first social equity program in Oakland, California. Thank you, Oakland. Um, and San Francisco, Sacramento, LA, and then on the state level with Senator Bradford. The whole idea was like understanding the impacts of policies like the war on drugs, the failed policies, the war on drugs, redlining. How did those policies impact our communities? And then being able to create policies that kind of started to try to repair those impacts, right? And so we didn't intend equity to just be about cannabis. It was supposed to be that these policies impacted our access to education, to housing, to economic opportunity. And then so now we have to create systems that actually open up and create access to those things so we can balance it out. And so after creating policy here in California, after Prop 64 was passed, the legal, adult consumption, and retail of cannabis in California, we needed to focus on how are we as small businesses understanding how business works in America, and it is about access. Obviously, if you have more buying power, more access, it's easier for you to compete. So as small businesses, as impacted communities, how do we compete knowing that we have a deep understanding of this product, our consumers? These are things that we've been technically in business with for a long time, a lot of us, even before it was a business. And so we understood that there was a need for a network. So first of all, I created the equity trade certification. It is a federal certification mark like fair trade or organic to identify our products. Reason there was a need for that is twofold. Number one is you have retailers that made commitment to social equity products, right? And so, or other operators that made commitments in order to get licensed, they needed to make commitments to offer opportunities for social equity licensees. Unfortunately, each area has a different process, has different qualifications for their social equity programs. Oakland is different than LA, is different than San Francisco, is most likely and 100% different than Maryland or Colorado or New Jersey. And so, how do we recognize as consumers or as operators or businesses, how do they recognize that that is a social equity business? And so what we do at the Equity Trade Network and certification, the certification is about just qualifying that you've been through a local city, state, or national social equity program. And just like fair trade or organic, we store that information, those qualifications, and then unify it under a unified symbol, the equity trade certification, so that consumers and retailers and other operators can identify those products are owned by social equity and small business licensees or legacy operators. And then from there, like, that's not just enough. Like, we need whatever it is you're doing in the business, you're sourcing, you're buying packaging, you're doing sales, you need access to shelf space. Like, these are all needs and they are all relationships that you need to build. As a small business operator, it is it is very hard to gain that because you are wearing all the hats. You're making your product, you're selling your product, you're delivering your product, but now you also have to build those relationships. So if you're not at places like some of these conferences and doing those relationship building, you're not doing the market research, it is very hard to get that information. So just like the, equity programs or licensing in general, we utilized our experience and our access to be able to pass on that information to other people. So like just like Mike mentioned, if I've already made a mistake that cost me thousands of dollars, I'd rather give you that information so that you don't make those same mistakes and you progress quicker. Oftentimes
Right.
in America, that everybody thinks that we are competition, right? And so people are afraid to share that knowledge or those experiences or those successes and failures. But really, this is the first industry where from seed to sale, we have the opportunity to support each business and each other's successes, right? We can become vertically integrated by the way that we do business. We don't have to do business in the same manner that just kind of undermines everybody. We can actually support the successes of each other's businesses. And in fact, we need that, right? So, as an
Yeah, the
example,
co-opetition instead of just competition.
yeah, we're being if you're not well capitalized, you don't have 100,000 $1 million in your bank account just sitting there to pay for wages or whatever you need to do, then you have to be very specific about how you do this, and you're being outsourced. If somebody has that type of money and they're coming in to source packaging or product or whatever it is, obviously they can offer a better price because they're buying more in bulk. Well, how do we do the same thing? We come together as businesses, as small businesses, and we combine that buying power. We combine the marketing power. We combine our reach and our resources by utilizing our resources to help each other. And so the equity trade certification has 75 plus members. We went national last year at the National Cannabis Festival. We have 75 plus business members from California, New Jersey, um, Colorado, Maryland, DC, so we are growing, and the idea is that California was a little ahead of the curve when it comes to social equity and also, in terms of cannabis in general, we've been creating culture. Let's share this with other states that are moving through things that we've moved through so that they can progress a little faster. And then that network allows us. So we've had businesses in San Francisco like SF Roots that have helped out social equity operators in Michigan release their brand here, get their experience with the industry, and as they develop their licenses in Michigan, they already had some experience. And then once they're established, they're helping SF Roots release their brand in Michigan. So again, is how do we utilize our resources collectively, our knowledge and our experiences to help each other create an ecosystem that supports each other.
Those are some fantastic examples, and I love seeing the momentum that you're gaining here. And I was going to ask you a question about some specific answer examples, but you beat me to it, so I love that. And I'm betting that some of the work that MCBA is doing with their equity report, collaboration and working across states and across organizations is probably hugely important there. So, Mike, will you tell us a little bit more about the equity report that I think you're going to planning on launching this year. Is that right?
Yeah, the plan is to launch this later this year, I believe in the fall. Where right now we're in the we've done the kind of like the revamping outline, right? This is, by the way, there was a report put out in 2022 by the organization. This is before my time at the association. Shout out to the team back then, Amber Littlejohn and everybody, because it was a very well put together report, and then subsequently well received, and referenced and used. We hear all the time still from regulators and legislators around the country that actually reference this and use this as they created their programs. And so we don't take this lightly, and we say, okay, let's make sure we really put what we need to make this revamp proper. The revamp, to be clear, we're going to have the report itself, which is going to be a lot of quantitative data, very data-driven, data-focused, looking and analyzing across the country. What are these different programs? Like Ramon was saying, they're all so different, but there's also some similar threads. There's some similar challenges that they're all trying to solve. Like, what are we seeing across the country? And then we're also going to accompany that with a qualitative like a PR kind of campaign. We're able to tell the stories and share the stories. And so, Ramon, definitely want to make sure we're connecting with some of the folks within the Equity Trade Network. I know we already are. We have at least one board member who's actually part of the Equity Trade Network. Shout out to Tiana and Queen Mary. So we're really getting these stories and these, as Ramon mentioned, like the stories are more than just stories, right? They're lessons. They're ways that we can educate each other and really, to Ramon's point earlier, accelerate each other's growth. And so the report is about being able to put all these things together and being able to then communicate this clearly to other folks in other states, whether they're advocates and business leaders or regulators and legislators, and being able to kind of start putting together more of a unified message around what needs to happen with these equity programs, right? Especially in today's climate, we need to understand that, across this country, equity has a very different lens that it operates through in each state. But it doesn't mean that the problems don't exist and aren't the same. And so, how do we come together with a cohesive game plan and strategy that does apply and does work and can be, so to speak, plug and play depending on the state that it's in? So, hopefully that answers the question, and really gets people to understand the importance of the report. If you're interested in being involved, just reach out. If you want us to include your story and things, just reach out, Mike at minoritycannabis.org. Um, you can find us at minoritycannabis.org, but that's really one of our main projects this year. We're looking to unveil it. I believe the goal is somewhere around the Congressional Black Caucus and Hispanic caucuses in September in DC. Also, potentially as part of Black Cannabis Week. Shout out to Sharon, doing amazing work out there. So, absolutely.
Amazing. Is there going to be kind of a call for data or, submit something that people should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's a little more informal. I mentioned earlier doing things a little on the grassroots side of things, where we're really working through our networks. So that's why calls like this, webinars like this are really important, because we really want to tap into the network. If you're interested in being a part of this, just reach out to us. We may put out some kind of more formalized form once we start figuring out through the initial research what the actual buckets are really looking like. But we've stayed away from doing that at this point, just because right now we're still in that initial research phase. But definitely reach
Sure.
out. Definitely reach out.
And
Sure.
to
Go ahead.
and to that point, as a membership-led organization, Equity Trade Network, that data that we get back leads us towards, how we direct opportunities for businesses and brands. It leads us towards how we focus our advocacy for those local areas or state areas. What are the things that we advocate for the loud list? The biggest mistake that California made is it didn't listen to operators, people that have been operating in that system. So no matter how intentional you are about creating policies or rules that are equitable, if you are not in touch with how those rules impact the actual operators or how they are impacting the actual individual business owner, then you can create just as much damage as the policies that we're talking about, like the failed war on drugs. And so that has happened in California, and what happens in California in cannabis will happen in the rest of the world in cannabis. So we would prefer that, folks were able to take those messages, were able to voice their opinions very loudly, so those same mistakes don't happen in other states. And so it is very necessary for folks to give their feedback and input.
I love that. In this industry, you got to be really loud, and to get your point across to the policymakers, you got to be really loud for sure. So in the few remaining minutes that we have left, I want to encourage folks to drop in any questions they might have in the Q&A. One or two more things I want to touch on, and Mike, yeah, I think there was a point you wanted to make.
Yeah, sorry. One of the ways that we're also going to be collecting that data, thanks Ramon for triggering my brain here, is we will have surveys at the equity workshop tour stops. We also have the opportunity to collect video testimonials and things of that nature. So the surveys will be to that point, that quantitative data, as well as an opportunity to provide some insights and best practices and things of that nature. So if you come to the tour, you'll be able to directly put your input into this report and the advocacy work that we're doing.
And if you go to equitytradenetwork.org, we just this year did an impact report of the work that we're doing because we need to be accountable to the membership and the policies or the programs that we're developing for our business operators. And it highlights, I think people need to see that in very graphic form of what it looks like. And just an overall view is that individually we aren't able to create the same impact, but collectively as businesses working together, we were able to create a larger impact than even some of the $500 million invested companies that came in and out of California that came and left because they didn't understand the industry. And so that data, that feedback, the information that we're sharing collectively as a network has helped businesses that are not invested survive 10 years of madness, almost 10 years of madness here in California, where we've watched 500, $600 million companies come and go, not knowing how to impact.
Right, right. And that's the thing that from the trade show perspective, we've certainly seen the rise and fall of that. So in the last few minutes, I'd love to ask both of you, what are some good strategies that you've seen trade shows be able to implement that actually helps open up access and level the playing field? What's kind of, I'd love to hear from you, maybe like one kind of strength, an example of something that's worked well, and maybe one area for improvement on the trade show side of things, because trade shows really exist to help serve the industry and bring people together. So
Yeah.
there's pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses. So Ramon, what's your take?
I think, for me, it was the first from 2016 to like 2019 or 2015 to 2019 as we were creating social equity policies and stuff in California, it was very necessary. I actually used a press pass because I didn't have money to go to a lot of these trade shows in order to gain access. Why that was important is because you are doing market research as a business and a brand. Like there was a lot of information there that you can't get even scouring hours online trying to figure out what packaging am I using, what is going to make my life easier in creating pre-rolls or manufacturing, even in the sense of what are other people doing so you can be able to create your individuality as a brand. You need to see the different machines, the different packaging options, the different, insurance options, property research or whatever those things are that are necessary for you to run your business. You need to be able to gain access and be able to be like have an informed decision because for small businesses, every little one of those decisions can cost thousands of dollars that is not necessary or is necessary in order for your business to succeed or fail. And so like you need to do that market research. It was a wealth of data. I still have stacks of books and business cards from every single both international, local, and national conference that I went to be able to gather this information and bring it back to my team, bring it back to the network, bring it back to our local community and say, hey, these are the different things that people are using so that we can, tighten up what our business plan or our business model or what it is that it looks like. That was invaluable, like on both ways, good or bad, like it was very invaluable. The bad side of some of that is that you definitely got to do your research. You'll walk through the manufacturing area and you'll have claims, you'll have five different pre-roll machines and they'll say, "Oh yeah, this will pump out 8,000 pre-rolls a minute." Problem is that this is a new industry and they're taking technology from other industries and trying to apply it to cannabis. Doesn't always apply. I've watched people spend 30, 40, 50, $100,000 on machine leasing machines and they're sending them back a year later, 2 years later, because it was never able to be consistent in terms of producing what they said it produced. And so know your products, definitely do the market research, definitely try it out, try different things, make sure that you're like really diving into it. Don't believe just the first thing you see. But for that type of research, I was able to get a lot of research done in a small amount of time. But it can be distracting. So have a mission. If you're there to check out packaging, go check out the packaging. If you're there to make business
Plan.
relationships or research, go there for that because it can be distracting and it can also
Yeah.
kind of like keep you from actually achieving your goals.
Right. Yeah. Have a plan and recognize the importance of seeing stuff in person. And the first thing I heard you say was that years ago you were able to get into a conference on a press pass, which generally doesn't have a dollar amount attached just to the ticket. So I'm wondering, is something like being able to offer sort of a scholarship option for folks to apply to get a free ticket, something that trade shows can be doing? Yeah.
Yeah, we as a network because we have so many like operating members. That is one of the biggest thing that myself and Nina have been able to do is negotiate different deals. So for different trade shows, we're able to negotiate social equity discounts or free tickets for social equity operators to be able to access that information. We're able to collectively. Negotiate discounted testing rates or discounted access to certain tech platforms that we might need or POS systems with the understanding that we're smaller businesses and so we have less needs in terms of what there is, but we also need access. And so is there a way to what we've done is be able to work with allies. That's part of our thing is not everybody is equity, but we need our allies, people that are aligned in actually helping small businesses, whether that's local hiring, shelf space requirements, whatever internal programs that they're committed to help grow this community and help support small businesses and the diversity of businesses, then we're able to negotiate terms with them that actually give us tiered access to be able to grow into that. If this, if trees, for example, as a POS system cost a retailer $2,000 a month, and that's just the thing, and you're a small retailer that doesn't make that, then that is limiting your access. It's limiting your ability to grow. So being able to work with these bigger companies to create programs that are tiered based on business size and give access has been a great advantage of what we've been able to do with collective voice and power.
Exactly, that collective voice and being able to join and be a member of something like this, that's huge. So Mike, as we're the clock is ticking down, let me hear from you on your kind of, one success you've seen from trade shows and opening up access and one thing that they could be doing better.
Yeah, so a lot of I mean this could be its own hour-long conversation, I feel like.
Yeah.
To double down on what Ramon is saying here too, and like, seriously, hats off to Ramon and everybody else, like, some of the folks at our own organization as well that have been able to negotiate these kinds of things, because I understand from doing this work that that's not actually that easy. Ramon made it sound easy, right? Like, but it's not. And to me, the thing that I would say to trade shows and conferences and things like this is make it easier to actually figure this out, right? Make it easier to figure out how to provide that access and don't look at it as, oh, we're giving things away and we're giving out handouts. No, actually, you're providing value to everybody else for the folks that we're looking to make sure are there. because the folks that like Ramon is talking about, the folks that I'm talking about, the folks that we're working with here are actually in a lot of ways the backbone of this industry and understand a lot about this industry, its roots, the consumer, the product innovation in such different ways. And so I really want conferences and folks that run these to flip it on its head and recognize, oh, I should actually be putting some time and effort and energy into figuring this out on my end too, because this is actually going to add value to my conference, not only for right now, but long term as well, especially if I'm building something of substance, right? And that way, those of us that are doing a lot of this work, whether on a volunteer basis or on very close to volunteer type basis, a lot of time, don't have to spend all of our energy figuring all those pieces out to help make your conference better. So I know that's a little bit maybe not the nicest way to put things, but one of the things I'll say so far about CMB from what I've seen is that there is a lot more intent and intention there to figure out how do we figure this out, and that makes all the world of difference. So if you're one of those conferences that is not really putting that intention there, hopefully what I'm saying right now, if you're hearing this, just put some more intention there because I think that that could really go a long way towards helping everybody in this space. That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is, to double down again on what Ramon was saying there about goals. I'm huge on SMART goals. So don't just simply make your goal about, and if you don't know what a SMART goal is, go look it up, SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. The goal, the purpose of SMART goals is to make sure that you accomplish that goal. When you walk into that conference, if it's, to get, more contacts, you could walk out there with three and you achieve your goal, but then you realize, oh shit, I didn't actually write down enough of those people's emails or phone numbers or put them in my phone or take the pictures or whatever it is, put a number on it. I need to have, 30 contacts of this type, right? Whatever it may be. So I think that when we look at things through that lens and we go, whether you're coming to a workshop, and by the way, CMB, thank you. I noticed you all have like that pre-day for workshops. Huge, in my opinion. If you're going to CMB, check that out because I think workshops is where the magic happens. That's why we run a lot of workshops because the ability to get into those intimate conversations and really be in a really focused with people that are very aligned is huge. And then go to the conference for the next 2 days. So I think that's a success on CMB's part is to make sure to integrate that part at the beginning. I think that also it's great on your part to be being intentional about how do we incorporate better and greater access because we recognize the New York market has like so many real authentic people that maybe sometimes aren't sure if they want to throw down all the coin on exactly the conference, pass. So anyway, I'm digressing, but I think that those are things that can be done that really I think are successful is making sure that we're intentional about who's able to be at the conferences. And then if you are able to make those conferences, making sure that we're really setting those SMART goals. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mike. So we've had one question that I'm just going to kind of quickly address. It's the question being asked is about how do we think tariffs are going to help or hurt cannabis businesses? I feel like this is something that changes every single day at this point, so I'm not sure that answering it here is actually going to give anything completely helpful, but it's the kind of thing that if you come to the Cannabis Means Business Conference, it will be a topic of conversation. And to Mike's point, thank you for pointing out those workshops. One of those includes taking your cannabis brand or business around the world. And for sure, the tariffs discussion is going to be a topic there. And at that point in early June, maybe we'll have something a little bit more consistent happening with US policies. So we'll be able to better answer that. Wanted to also shout out a couple of those workshops. They're really, to your point, Mike, they're really hands-on with these marketing and communications for brands and retailers. He's got a great lineup of folks who have built up some really good brands and also had some failures along the way, so they can speak to that point. And then another really cool hands-on workshop, great tool for business owners, AI. How do we leverage AI? What's happening out there? So encourage folks to check out cannabismeansbusiness.com to look at the workshops. You can learn more about MCBA at minoritycannabis.org and learn more about the Equity Trade Network at equitytradenetwork.org. Love these for you guys. And since we're kind of at time, I really want to extend one final thank you to both of our guests. Mike, Ramon, this has been such an juicy, interesting, relevant conversation. Thank you for the time, and I'm excited for the future of cannabis, knowing that about all of the amazing work that you guys and your incredible organizations are doing. So thank you.
I just want to shoot that shout out back, to Cannabis Means Business and yourself, Jillian, for, like Mike was saying, being intentional about pulling in um, different views and being very diverse. It is necessary for a conference or a trade show to be as diverse as possible in this industry because it is something that is ever evolving and changing. And if we're not investing into the diversity of that, you could be turning away. The next greatest thing just because they're smaller and they can't afford to actually participate in the way that other capitalized companies participate. And so appreciate you guys really looking at that very intentionally and very creatively and making sure that there is access because the the biggest part of all this is information. The information that you get back to lead for your business is the most powerful piece of it. It's less about the actual packaging or your ideas or the branding. It's more about the information behind it that allows you to lead informed decisions. So I appreciate you for giving us this time and space. And folks can reach out at equitytradenetwork.org. Ask as many questions as possible. Contact me or anybody on the panel. I'm sure we'd have a wealth of information available for you.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for being here, Ramon. Mike, thank you for being here. And with that, we'll close it out. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.